Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, Pat and I are going to do something completely different, something we've never tried before. We are going to be talking about a variety of different types of replicas, and we are going to be ranking them on a tier list from S being like superior or the best of the best, down to F tier being trash. And we are going to rank them based on some not random criteria, but criteria as they pertain to us. So, number one, I've only selected replicas that we have some form of experience with, either because we've used them, we've had them used on us, we've had a chance to handle them, or we've used them as our own replicas for a game or for a season or what have you. And we are going to rate them on
There's
aesthetics.
There's at least one or two here that's, oh God, I've been shot by that a lot.
Yeah. We're going to rate them on like aesthetics, general vibe, how we like them, how we like the replicas. Now, understanding that for a lot of these replicas, there's a lot of different makes and manufacturers, so we likely only have experience with one. So if we say that a replica that you love is not our favorite, we might not have tried the one that you really like. Or maybe you're just wrong. I don't know. But the point is, this is our opinion. This is a bit of fun. Let's not take it too seriously. However, if you do have some serious gripes with our selections, feel free to let us know in the comment. I'm going to be sharing my screen. And also for those of you who are watching the podcast on YouTube, you'll be able to see the tier as we put the tier list as we put the replicas in there. So without further ado, let's get into it. And let's start by looking at the different replicas. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get Pat to give us a random number from 1 to 35.
Let me grab my RNG here. 23 says Google's random number generator.
23. Okay. So number 23 is the Chris Vector. So how do we feel about the Chris Vector, like in general? I know that there's definitely a couple of different manufacturers, and I've seen it used. I've seen one locally, and obviously Ty's talked a lot about it in Discord as well.
So I've handled, I think, 2 versions of this. Probably someone's going to be like, you're wrong about this, but I think made by the same manufacturer, a GBB and an electric.
It's KWA, was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so. The GBB, I mean, like, it has the drawbacks that I see in any GBB, largely from a, we live in Newfoundland and it's cold.
Yes, that's very true. View, yeah.
Right? Like, I've tried a gas M4, and when I say gas here, I mean propane.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I really like the Chris. Like, Phil's laughing because, like, yeah, it's a small gun.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, it's probably the chunkiest small gun we've got there. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's up there
for an SMG. It's a thick boy. So it's also super sci-fi and, like,
yeah,
uber modern and weird. So that adds to my thinking it's really cool. I feel like as an airsoft replica, I just have a leftover, like, ick for long stick mags that I don't have anywhere to store.
Yeah. I definitely would agree. I think the magazine is not super awesome in terms of, like, the kit that you're going to use to wield it and all this kind of stuff. And I think, we're not going to get into the real steel aspect, but this has particularities for real steel that make it desirable, that really don't translate to airsoft at all in any way, shape, or form. So you're left with a form factor that's kind of cool in space age and all. Don't get me wrong, like, it's interesting. But my angle is always going to come back to, like, practicality. Like, is it really usable? Is it really serviceable as a main squeeze, right?
For fashion soft, it's got to be one of the coolest things, like, just in terms of how weird and interesting and unique it looks. For, like, practical play, I don't know, like, B?
Yeah, I think it's our first one, so we don't want to go too hard, right? We don't want to say, like, oh, it's S, because I mean, like, all the other ones are going to compare themselves to B. to this one if we put it in B. So I think B tier is maybe a little generous, but I'll give it to you just on the basis that you think it's really cool.
Like,
But yeah, I think
it's guns that I would cosplay with.
yes, yeah, definitely agree. Okay, so you know what? We'll give you the
Like,
B on that one.
it's getting strong fashion soft points from me.
Yes. All right. Let's get another random number.
Can do. 5.
All right. This one is a classic, literally, and it is the Thompson.
Yep.
So, what do we think about the Thompson? I've used Johnny's a few times. I've used Steph's once, which I think is yours now, if I'm not mistaken.
It moved on from my collection pretty quickly.
Okay.
Mostly because if I'm going to use a World War II gun, I own a Garand.
Yes, that's true.
This is shiny. You remember what I just said about stick
Yes.
bags? Like the Thompson has going for it. I mean, obviously, like if you're rocking a Thompson, you're doing it for some kind of style and swag. You're not really necessarily doing it because it's the best airsoft gun mechanically for airsoft. So like I have to give it a solid like a nod there. But I hate everything about using them. I hate the iron sights. I hate the grip. I hate the ergonomics. I hate the mag. I hate reloading it. Like, the only thing it has going for it is that it's from World War II and is in a lot of really cool movies and pictures.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
I think you named a lot of the ergonomics, and what's interesting is that, it is an old replica, right? It's a replica of an old weapon, I should say. And so, as a consequence of that, like, it's not as adjustable. Now, I know some like absolute like burn victims on Reddit have done some nasty things to Thompsons to make them modern or whatever. So fair enough. But like in its stock configuration, like it's fine for me because the length of pull is fine. Like it's wieldy for me. The ergonomics in terms of using it they all work for me, given the fact that I'm 5'6", got a normal wingspan, let's call it. All that works for me. But to your point, you're big. We've talked about it before. You're an ogre. Your wingspan is huge. All of those things add some complications when then now you have a replica that you can't adjust in any way to suit your particular form factor.
It gets a solid not for Gronk out of 10.
Definitely. And you mentioned like it's not intuitive to use. Like I remember the first time I used one, I'm like, wait, what's the mag release on this? Like how do I use this? And then in terms of the safety, same sort of deal. Like I'm like, does not feel familiar. Looking at it, I'm like, this should feel familiar, and it doesn't. Like it felt very strange. Is it cool? I mean,
it's definitely
undeniably.
Cool. Like it is. I mean, it's gangster, like in a literal kind of way.
Yes,
but
I think
from a buying point of view, like. The thing I'll give it, actually, I'll give it this from like a buying airsoft replicas point of view and from a teching it point of view, because I have taken these apart. They're pretty easy to work on. They're pretty easy to take apart and put back together, and they're also pretty affordable. Most of the Thompson replicas are quite reasonable, unless you're trying to get one that's like steel and wood, in which case you have chosen an entirely different thing. And like, don't get me wrong,
battery goes in the stock, right?
Yep, battery goes in the stock.
So there's lots of space for a battery, which I mean is a nice feature for sure, right? But then you're stuck with the mags. And if you're doing a World War II kit, then you will have like the pouch that you need to carry those mags. But yeah, just in general, I think it's definitely not what I would consider a beginner replica for sure. Even though the price points might say otherwise. I
think it's the replica of people who looked at Band of Brothers and thought, hell yes. And I'm not sure that other than that it has a practical like go-to in my use case. I'm like, I know somewhere John is angry with us both right now.
yeah. But to be honest, I think it's a C. Like I don't think
I would even go so far as like D. Although I guess
my God, it can't be that bad.
I mean, I would tell you to try using one with a 6'2" frame and giant noodly arms, but like...
I do think though there's some redeeming qualities that you mentioned around like the teching aspect of it, as well as the battery aspect of it, and the fact that even if they're not like amazing, I've generally felt that they're pretty rugged and reliable. Like in terms of I'm not afraid to break this on the field. Like And
I
you know how hard I am on kit, and
that's
never
true.
felt
That's
that way,
true.
right?
It does get the bonus points for Phil has run it for like more than a game and it still functioned after.
Yes. So C, I've definitely okay. It's not F. That's out of the conversation, and I think B's out of the conversation too. I think it's like borderline C or D.
Yeah, I'll give it C. Just again,
Okay.
like I'm willing to give the Thompson extra points for being just cool as hell.
Yeah.
Because it does have that going for it.
That has to be worth something. Yeah. All
Right.
right. Let's get another number and let's see what we get.
10.
10. All right. G36. Now, here, the picture is a G36C, but we can include the G36K as well into sort of into that same conversation. The Heckler and Koch G36
The first
line
airsoft gun.
family.
The first
Right?
airsoft gun Pat ever thought about buying.
Yeah.
And he's so glad he did.
Yeah, definitely.
And like to the people who are fans, none of my dislike for the G36 comes out of like any real steel thing, or even really out of the ones I've shot for airsoft, other than that they feel very plasticky and toy-y.
Definitely.
They have sort of I feel like if I squeeze this too hard, it's gonna cease functioning.
Agreed. I felt the same way. I remember the first time I saw one. I think the same time you did. Like the first time I saw one in real life, I was like, wow. I always thought these were really cool. And to be honest, I think they look great. And the G36K in particular is amazing. But when I saw it and I handled it, I was like, oh, it was extremely disappointing. Like you said, like it felt like a toy. Like it felt
Yep.
cheap and plasticky. And understanding that the real one, I think, is like polymer, like it's not made of metal. Like, fair enough. But like, what ends up happening with airsoft is metal replicas get made with cheap pot metal, and polymer replicas get made with cheap plastic, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure
yeah,
the real thing feels a lot more robust, but like unfortunately, I'm probably never going to get to try a shooting one.
yes,
So, in terms of the airsoft stuff, definitely has a big pile of battery space, so that's really nice. Like it's a really user-friendly replica in terms of that. Have to give the slops to the cocking lever because it breaks on all of them.
yeah.
I think every one of them I've ever seen has been broken off because people
Yeah.
like want to do tons and tons of repetitions with it because it's cool, and then it just goes off into the woods somewhere.
There's a lot of
Goodbye.
G36C replicas, and a lot of them are just like inexpensive, cheap, like maybe entry level, whatever. And as a consequence, you get a lot of that. When you look at the G36K, which I think Jordan has one, if I'm not mistaken, I have never seen one, but I know that a lot of them have been discontinued. I think Umarex used to make one, and so because there's fewer of them, chances are that the quality on those is probably a different It might not be, but my expectation is that if Jordan is using it, it's probably better than just a basic. But the C's, there's so many of them in circulations that are just.
I definitely remember
not great.
I've never seen an expensive one, and I know when we started, you could get kind of cheap ones and kind of more expensive ones. So I definitely haven't handled a nice one. I'm not willing to say, oh, there aren't any nice ones. It also has that sort of like, okay, so this is M4 adjacent, but it's using weird mags.
Yes, that also, yeah, like why? Like that's the one thing that really grinds my gears when it comes to like replicas. I mean, I guess the real ones too, but I don't really care about the real ones. I only care about the replicas. If you're using like NATO Stanag ammo and your mags are meant to, like the FAMAS did this exact same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we shoot 5.56, but we use weird mags, so you can't, like, why? And I think later on they modded it so it would take like regular standard mags, but the G36 is not the case. It's like, why would you do that? Like, it would be a lot nicer if it just took regular mags.
And
right?
for airsoft, I know you can get a magwell adapter to run 4 mags in them. But at that point, I think you're losing cool factor because, like, if you're going to use something that's not an M4 that takes M4 mags, I have questions. It's like the people who are like, "Oh, I slapped an M4 mag on my P90." It's like,
yes,
I've run a P90.
Yeah.
I completely understand why that would be helpful in terms of like your mags, in terms of like carrying your kit, in terms of everything. But I hate it.
Yeah, that's not why you have a P90, bro. Like, let's go. So what are we thinking about the G36? I'm thinking it's like C.
Yeah,
G36C, quite literally.
yeah.
Seems very appropriate.
G36C can go in C tier. I'm here for it.
Okay, all right.
I will say, like, if we had it separate, I would give the K probably B,
Yeah,
because I like a longer barrel and a longer rifle, and it does that nicely. And like, if you could get kits to do the LMG versions and stuff, that would be really cool.
yeah, the
But I
MG36 or
know,
whatever it is, yeah.
but I know that's a pain. Insofar as, I mean, like, there's not a ton of difference between a K and an MG in airsoft terms, but like,
Yeah.
just it bugs me.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing between the C and the K is like the C, or excuse me, the K had that like really cool charging handle with the sight and stuff that made it look even more sci-fi, which is definitely cool points addition to that. Yeah.
Definitely, although it reminds me that the sights on the airsoft ones are super bad.
Yeah, well, there's that
So
too.
the K sights definitely for airsoft don't have a positive reputation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh god, who made this? Why?
All right, hit us with another number. Let's see what we get.
32.
32. All right, so 32, we're venturing into pistol territory. Now we're going to talk about the high kappa. I've seen them used on the airsoft field. I haven't used. I guess the only high kappa I did use was back in my very very early days. I had a Infinity 4.3 something.
Yep, I still have what's left of it in a box.
Like it was
it
cool.
is irreparable.
It was the first. It was the first GBB pistol I ever had. It was way too expensive for what it was. They're fine. I know that they can be upgraded. I know that for a lot of like people who play Speedsoft and CQB, like they're very well regarded in general.
Yeah,
1911 form factor is pretty well regarded as a sidearm, like for airsoft in general, just because of the availability of parts and like the longer barrel and all this kind of stuff. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. Other than, I mean, I think it's solid, but I don't think it's anything to write home about. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I should love this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do love it just because there isn't a sidearm on our list probably that I don't think is great. Just because I think they're fun, but you can do everything in the world with a high cap to make it look cool and to make it probably. I think of it in a lot of ways as the M4 of airsoft pistols. Like, you can do everything with it. You can make it great. You can make it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But I don't love them.
Yeah.
They're really cool. I just prefer a slight variation if I'm gonna go for a 1911.
Yeah. Like a Night Warrior or something like that, right?
Yeah, or just the classic, like,
yeah, the A1 or whatever.
Yeah, like, it's just it feels cool.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about?
One of the big drawbacks to the high kappa for me is also that, like, any longtime listeners are aware that I hate money, and high kappas are a place to pour money in.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, like, maybe I don't go there.
So what are we thinking in terms of tier list? Like, in terms of an airsoft replica, where does this line? I don't think it's S for sure. I mean, could be A.
I think it probably does, like, despite the fact that neither of us is really enamored of them, I think it probably does go into A. I mean, like, it's, as a tech, if someone's like, hey, I want to get a airsoft pistol, and I have absolutely no preference for form factor, it's definitely the one I'd recommend.
But I think on the basis alone that neither of us like it, it's going to go B. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Because, slightly demoted.
Yeah, slightly demoted. Because, like, you know what? Like, yes, it's like the expression of, like, chocolate covered raisins. It's like, yeah, you could pick raisins, sure, but, like, you could do so much better, right? Like,
for sure.
And that's how I feel about the high kappa. It's like, yeah, you're great, that's awesome, but, like, do something else for me.
Yeah, it's really, really effective and really good, and just, I don't love it, and I don't know why.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna pick one. Yeah, I'm gonna pick one for us now instead of doing the RNG.
Sure.
I'm gonna pick the AK-47. So the classic, like, woodstock, wood grip AK-47.
Honestly, it's outstanding. I have never used one and not had fun using it. Like, um, the technically, I'm not as proficient with them as I am with an M4. But like, for my money, it's the right length. It does all the
Hmm.
right things. I tend to think the ones I've handled that are wood and metal tend to feel really like yes, meaty, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
They give me the warm fuzzies. It pew pew is good. You can get a huge variety of them. They are the other thing that I recommend for people as a starter gun next to an M4. Just on a there's just an unreasonable number of these. You can get parts, you can get mags, you can get accessories, you can get everything you want. Um, I S all day for me. Like, they're just a really, really good airsoft replica. Not to say that you can't get a crappy one, but
Hmm.
you can get a crappy one of anything on this list.
That's true. Yeah.
You can buy a
I
bad high kappa. I guarantee it.
Yeah, no question. So I actually would tend to agree. Even though I haven't used them a whole lot, I think every time I've used them or even just handled one, it's always been like a positive experience. To echo what you're saying, like I always felt like they were like rock solid. They're super rugged. I never was concerned that I would ever break one in the way that I'm playing. I ran one for Community Day. I did an AK video where I ran an AK for the whole day with like a Chicom, and I ran Stefan's AK. And let's be honest, like it's not a slouch, right? It's well upgraded and stuff, but you can do that with an AK,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Like the
you
parts
can.
availability is good, and to be honest, like where even though I don't use one, there is this like cool factor to the AK-47. Like I think about like the profile of a shooter holding an AK-47 like at an airsoft game, and I'm like, there's something distinctly cool about that. That if they were holding like a FAMAS or an MP5, it wouldn't be the same.
I mean, it's not to get into real gun stuff for very long, but it's one of the defining weapons of the last 80 years.
Yeah.
And looks to be one of the defining weapons for a few more.
And it's
Um,
got such a distinctive profile too. Like when I was getting this tier list ready, it had some replicas already populated in that, and I was trying to figure out a couple. I asked on the Discord, like, "Hey, what's this? What's that?" Um, but like that one, no trouble picking it out. It has such a distinctive like shape, the two tone between the wood and the metal, and that distinctive gas block and stuff.
yeah,
Like,
you definitely know
right?
what you are looking at.
Yeah. So I would agree here. It's S tier all day long. What about its North American counterpart, the M16? And here I'm talking about like the M16A2, like the classic that we know and love, that you used for many years before
Yeah,
you got 203
and
on it. So I
I
guess it was
mean,
still an M16.
I also think the M16 is fantastic. These days, I mean, both of us are running something that's sort of in between it and carbine length.
Hmm.
But a good airsoft M16 body, you can do anything to. You can make it into especially if you're willing to go and purchase additional parts and stuff, you can make it to do anything that an airsoft gun can do. I really like the I guess the controls,
Hmm.
the hardware, whatever you want to call it. So I don't feel that the bolt on it is super awesome to operate on like a gas blowback one.
Yeah.
People who've actually trained with that and done a bunch of it probably will tell me I'm foolish. It's just not a thing I've done a lot of, but it's easy to reload. I really like sort of classic M16 style fire selectors. You know, I've replaced the pistol grip on every one I've ever owned because I don't like the stock one.
Yeah.
But that's a big hands thing, and honestly, just the fact that you can do anything you want to it as a tech makes me giggle.
I think though, like when I think about the replica, I definitely want to knock the M16 down compared to the AK. And the reason why is I feel like the M16, the classic, right? The M16A2 with the handguard, etc. Like it's not as iconic. Like yes, it's iconic but like an
It's
AK is like it's got this cool factor.
it's
M16
also
doesn't
it,
have that cool
it's
factor,
also, if
right?
I'm being honest, for a lot of airsoft applications, not as good.
Hmm.
um, because the A2, like, and I ran one for ages, right? Um, is very long, and so
Yeah.
if you're running it in a environment where CQB or even just closer stuff is going to happen, it's going to be long and kind of in your way.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got a full stock on it. Like, it wasn't a problem for me because I am, long. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I mean, I think it still deserves the A.
Yes, definitely, definitely A. But see, when I think S tier M4 or like Armalite or AR-15 style, I would say the ones that are more modern, the ones like that we use. So instead of having just the heat shield, you have like, or the handguard, whatever you want to call it, like you have like a rail. And instead of having a fixed stock, you have a collapsible stock. Instead of that really bad pistol grip, you have an upgraded pistol grip. Like I think that gets us
Yeah,
into S tier
the
into S tier
the
territory for
modernized,
sure.
fancied up M16
Yeah,
slash M4 variants are definitely like S tier.
yeah, I'd put that up
Um,
there for sure.
collapsible stock, folding stock, like the ergonomic improvements are huge. Rails are a big deal.
Hmm.
And like, I mean, we don't get, like, airsofters don't end up using some of the toys that I think make rails most important in the real, like, military application of these things. But like, having a flashlight and an optic is fantastic.
Yeah, for guys who are using nods and they want
you
to
know
use like an IR illuminator or
All right.
like
Hey
a
man, like,
laser,
if,
IR
if you
laser or
if you
whatever,
have
fill
that
your
money all
boots.
day,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that is literally, I am sure, cheating. Like,
But even like
legal.
putting like a hand stop or
But
putting like a foregrip or something like that on a rail is also great. Mounting, cameras if you're doing like the YouTube thing, like we do, like
yep.
that's helpful too. Not
Um
that you can't do
we've
that with an
both
AK.
we've both got our forward sling mounted sort of somewhere in the middle of the rail
Yeah,
too.
on the RSA
Um
mount. For me, it's
so
like forward, like all that stuff is it's kind of nice, and like that gives the replica the flexibility that we need, and I think makes it very competitive in terms of upgradability and like handling and all this kind of stuff, and just it for me just edges out the classic
totally. The only
M16.
the only like M16 variant I would buy at this point is the, like, um 203 sort of, Punisher look one.
Hmm.
And that's more of a, like, just, it looks so scary and I love it. Like, I have no practical reason to purchase it, but like, that would tempt me. Otherwise, I'll stick with a modernized one.
Yeah. Um. Next, let's go a completely different direction. We're gonna pick the Uzi. So I've had the opportunity to shoot a propane powered GBB Uzi. This is many many years ago, and
I remember that.
yeah, I don't know. Did you get a chance to use it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've also used a CO2 one. So very silly.
Yeah,
Like, um all of the rounds down range, absolutely zero accuracy, which honestly is kind of seems like it is working like the real one. Not that I have ever shot one or really know anything about them. Just like,
hmm
um feels very 90s action movie. Can't say no to that. The one that we tried, if memory serves, also had a tendency to, like, just jam and devour BBs, and like, just, it was working really hard to break itself and not
yeah.
function.
It was definitely one of those replicas that were all about like the cool factor and not at all about the functionality.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
And so I think for me, like it gets F for functionality because that like you would buy it and it's like it's a wall hanger, it's maybe a plinker, but you can't realistically expect to use it during a game and rely on it to carry you through, right?
Because I'm gonna say this, someone's gonna, like, bring one to airsoft this year and school me with it. But like, they're useless.
Mhm.
It's a great gun for plinking in your backyard, and for pretending you're gangster with your friends. Like,
Yeah, and I mean it's a laugh. Don't get me wrong. Like when I shot that, like I had a great time
oh
shooting
yeah,
that.
the fun value is definitely there, but
But if
like,
I played it during a game, I would hate my life. Like no question.
yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, this is a small pistol.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna drop this guy right
Poor
down
guy.
into F tier. Why don't you give us another roll, Pat?
Sure. 30.
30. PX4.
Wow, just for me.
Just for you. I had to put it on this list.
So the PX4 described recently as to me by one of the folks on Discord as, oh yeah, you like the Beretta that no one remembers exists.
Yeah.
And yeah, the answer is I do like the weird Beretta. And I like it because of
Stargate Atlantis.
no, actually. Close, like, you know, I do like guns because of movies and sci-fi shows for sure. No, Inception.
Huh.
It's weird for me to like a gun that I most associate with Leonardo DiCaprio, who I'm not, you know, that big a fan of, but whatevs. Yeah, I love it. That being said, I think it is only an okay airsoft pistol. I've had no issues with mine. I haven't broken them or anything. The mags are weirdly badly made for something from Tokyo Marui. Like, it's not a stellar airsoft gun. I have one because this is the second one I've owned because I think it's really cool. And if I'm being honest, because pistols are not a place where I choose based on like what I think is mechanically the most effective sidearm for airsoft. You know, the thing I think is mechanically the most effective sidearm for airsoft, we've already put in B.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and like I can't, as much as I love it, I can't even put it as high up as the high kappa. It's great fun. It's very cute. But like it's not an amazing replica. I'm not here being like, oh man, everyone should go out and buy these. I use one because I think it's neat, and because it's fairly unique. I think I'm the only person I've ever met who's using one. You know,
not only are you the only person that I've ever met who's using one, you're the only person I've ever met who's also, and I've ever heard of, who's bought one, sold it, and then bought another one.
That is fair. Yeah,
that is some pretty serious dedication to that particular platform.
I am attached to it, and like, funnily enough, you know, not that this is really feasible given Canadian gun laws and stuff, but if I was going to get into real steel pistol shooting, I probably would buy one. You know, it in terms of like practical utility stuff, you know, it has never done me wrong. You know, it's not your best pistol for like long range performance and stuff. It's not your most upgradable pistol. When they came out, there were parts around. Increasingly, they're hard to come by. You know, I think
that's an important consideration, though. Like, really, like if you're like you said, like it's never done you wrong, and all, which is great. For the amount that you used, of course, I would be shocked if it had any wear and tear. But if and when that does happen, it's gonna be challenging to potentially source the parts that you need. Not impossible, but definitely more complicated than if you were using a high kappa or a Glock or something.
I mean, realistically, like I was actually looking at a couple of them on the Reddit buy and sell the other day because I was thinking, you know, if this ever breaks, I'm not going to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of so do I buy it? Like currently there are a couple available for like in very good condition for not a whole ton of money. And it's like, I can either buy a new pistol and a new Serpa at some point, or I can buy another of these for in case one of them breaks, and it will cost me a little less. But the practical value of that's dubious at best. So for now, I'm not doing anything silly. But yeah, like I really want to put it higher, but like C. Can we
C? Really? I was gonna say D, but I'll give you C like, just because you like it.
You're not wrong about putting it in D. Like airsoft subcompact pistols definitely don't, and like compact pistols don't get any benefit out of being small. I just like the thing. I think it looks cool. It's purely just a thing I think is shiny.
Do I think that it's better than the G36? I mean, like worse than the G? No, I don't think so. I think C is fine.
I mean, you can't think it's worse than a G36 after saying that. Like definitely. You don't necessarily want to own a G36, but like you've shot my PX4, it works well.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like at the end of the day, it does the thing.
I will say I do think it kind of feels like a toy, but that's just me. Don't hate
I
the
mean,
messenger. Like
that's
like
you're definitely. I mean, it's a tiny gun. Part of that's probably also
yeah,
like, as much as I love them, the fact that Marui replicas are mostly plastic. And I mean, the real one in this case is mostly polymer, so like it's not that big a weirdness, but
yeah.
is going to make them feel lighter and toyier for sure. Like I can't disagree with you. You know,
All right, we're gonna move on with a classic now. MP5. I guess this is the MP5A4 with the folding stock, but like just the standard MP5, like full length, not the compact, not the suppressed. What are we
you had one
thinking?
of those ages and ages ago,
I did, and
and it worked really badly.
it worked really badly. It wasn't a really good one. I
um,
know that I used an ICS one, I believe, that one of the local guys had, and that one felt rock solid.
yeah,
Like you
I've
could do the HK slap and not worry that the bolt or whatever was going to fly out the front of it.
you will have the HK slap causes parts of the gun to leave problem on pretty much all of them,
Mhm.
just because the bolt catch piece is made of, or like the charging handle rather is made of pot metal, so it's
Yeah,
never quite as robust as an airsofter wants it to be for how much they want to slap it. Um,
yeah. I liked it. I think that there's a lot of good stuff going. I know Chaz has an MP5 and he swears by it. I think the form factor is nice. The controls are nice from a manipulation standpoint. It's great. I like the collapsing stock more than the fixed stock in general for everybody. For me, it was fine because I guess my body mechanics were like my lentil pull and stuff was fine. But
the
I can appreciate
I found
people
the
wanting
fixed stock
adjustable
one
stocks.
weirdly. I found the fixed stock on the standard MP5 and on the SD6 I've used a bunch of. Um, Completely comfortable.
Mhm.
They're a super weird. They're a 9mm submachine gun that I find actually is comfortable for my ergonomics.
Mhm.
I don't tend to like the collapsing stock ones because they tend to be wobbly as hell. Um, it's really a me gronk too much problem, I suspect. But like, yeah, you can make them work really well. They're again very modifiable. Getting into and out of them is a pain. Like taking them apart and putting them back together is a nuisance,
Mhm.
from a tech point of view. But once you're actually manipulating the components, they're again, you can do a fair bit with them.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you get one of the classic ones with that handguard with the flashlight, they just have this amazing, like, retro sort of like Miami Vice sort of SWAT situation.
oh yeah,
Like,
they hit
yeah.
the right action movie vibes for when we were kids.
Yeah. And like Rainbow Six,
Oh yeah,
like Rogue Spear and all this kind of stuff. Like,
yeah. I mean,
just
we both
classic.
spent an unreasonable amount of time playing games in which we use them, so like it's hard not to love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an A tier
Yeah,
airsoft replica. I think too, like one of the things that it has going for it is there's so many available, and there's so like the parts availability, like even if they are a pain to get into, there's a lot of parts availability for it, which I think makes a big difference. Like if you had one today and you have a problem with it, you can very easily get a part that you need to upgrade, fix, or do whatever with
and
it.
like finding techs who can work on them is not going to be hard.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna. I think it's not as easy to work on as the M16, but like I'm comfortable with it being an A, and especially because like it has its own kind of unique cool guy factor.
Yeah, and even though it's got this unique cool guy factor, the mags are standard size. Like you can get lots of pouches for it. Like they're not unwieldy. I would say the same thing goes with the SD6. I would put it like the SD5 or like the suppressed one. We don't have to put it up there, but I would say like all that sort of like
Yeah,
family
I
is.
I slightly give the nod to the SD simply because it's what I used when we played way too much
Mhm.
way too much of Rogue Spear, but like that's more a like just nostalgia kind of thing. But
Yeah,
I mean they're functionally the same, and like it's airsoft. It's not any more suppressed than any other one.
yeah, that's right.
Um,
What
but
about the K? So I know Mark used the K for a really long time as his sidearm when he was
I
doing
I
sort
am
of like the
still mad
marksman
that
thing.
someone else got it when he
Yeah.
sold it. I Like, it's just, again, Pat, you like tiny guns too much. It's awful for me.
It's
It is
true.
completely useless. There's no reason for me to own one, like one, carry one, use one.
Hmm.
Um, but
And yet,
yeah, and yet, like, I think it would be I would try running one. Like, if I could figure out a way to run an MP5K on my belt as a sidearm, I would.
hmm,
Like, is that completely partial? Yes, absolutely. Would it slow me down much? Not really. It doesn't weigh that much more than the PX4.
yeah, I would, to be honest, I think I would put the K at B compared to A for the standard, just because it's so specific,
It's definitely
right?
not like you could even, for me, bump it down to C. It's really, really
Yeah,
cool, but it's
it's
not a
fair.
practical replica.
I didn't want to hurt your feelings, but
Like,
yeah, C seems
it doesn't
fine.
matter how much I like it. I
Hmm.
have to acknowledge that, like, I'm not going and buying one to, like, put into my kit to use on the regular today, tomorrow, or ever.
Yeah,
You know, uh, if you were like, if someone were to throw money at me and be like, Pat, go buy a subcompact SMG for airsoft, it's pretty much uncategorically the thing I'd buy at this point.
yeah,
But I can say that all day and still I haven't done it. So, right.
yeah. Why don't you pick one now for us to talk about?
Ooh, what do I want to talk about next? Um, Trying to decide between, like, one that I know you like and one that I know will annoy you. Let's grab the L85.
L85. Okay, so for me, like this is a really good example of an airsoft replica that I really want to like, and is actually like hot garbage. I haven't found a single L85 that I've handled for airsoft that felt nice, right? And I know that the
I'm
real
not sure the
steel,
real
like
ones even feel this.
I was also going to say, like I hear a lot of complaints from British soldiers about the L85 or L85 or whatever. Um, yeah, like I really liked it. Like looking at it, I think it's got a really cool vibe to it. But then when you use it, it's like, wow, like this just does not feel nice. Like it feels unwieldy. It's
it
pointable, but not in the right way.
it's
And
1987's Weapon of the Future, but not very good.
yeah, yeah, and like trying to work on them, I can't imagine what that's like.
I
I've
I have
never done
never
it.
taken one apart to
Yeah,
tech on it, and I don't want to.
yeah,
Um, I mean, in fairness, like, in terms of tech stuff, I think they're version 6, so they're probably not awful to take apart and work on. Uh, but they're heavy, they are unwieldy. I have used a cheap one, I've used an expensive one. Um, at the end of the day, every time I've used one, I've gone, this is just my M4, but worse. Like, it
yeah,
just, and like, I don't have, like, I use the P90. I think the P90 is cool. I don't really have a negative bias against, like, bullpup weapons. Phil's used a FAMAS. It's not that aspect of it. Like, the reload's different. All right, fine. It's body mechanics. You just learn a different reload. Good enough. We can do that. It it's heavy. It's bulky. It's awkward. Usually the airsoft ones are the shorties, so it doesn't tend to have as much barrel length as I want, because it's sort of down at the M4/carbine
yeah.
length. I
I
also
really
think,
feel
honestly,
like
objectively, that they're hideous, although in a, like, ugly thing that's coming to punch you in the face kind of way.
I think that like if you're the kind of person who wants to use an L85 and make it good, you have such a long road ahead of you. And like for that, I think it's D tier. Like I don't think it's an utter fail, but I
Yeah, I mean, like,
really
I don't put it in the spot where it's like, well, I would rather just not use this. Um,
yeah.
you know, the I think it is possible to be effective with one. I think it is possible to make one work. I just think it's way more effort than it's worth. Like,
Yeah,
I can't be bothered.
agree. It's not a fail, but it's not very high on that list.
Highly dubious.
All right, let's pick another one.
Sure. If I am picking, let's grab Any support weapon you like. We haven't done that.
RPK.
All right. The long noodly boy.
There was a guy here who used to use like an HPA RPK, and that thing was terrifying.
Yep.
Like it just had this like amazing like clack 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 kind of sound to it that really made you want to keep your head down.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you know, like it
You
was something else. And we've talked a lot on the podcast before about how like every replica here is a support weapon because everyone has access to full auto basically all the time. And if you don't have access to it, it's because you're on the village and no one has access to full auto. So the idea of like fully automatic fire itself is not, well, it's not foreign, but like the suppression factor from like the sound and the intimidation is not negligible. I think, like, especially if you're someone who's not accustomed to
totally.
hearing that, or you know, you're a beginner or whatever, it's like very intimidating.
Totally. And it's got a, because we're talking about a standard RPK, so it's got an enormous barrel on it, which means that it's, you know, fairly long range and accurized, much more so really than like your standard support weapon tends to be for airsoft purposes. Like you have a longer reach with it if you've got it tuned and built and nicely and dialed in. You can make them really nice. I probably, like, if I were going to build an AK, would be thinking about one.
Well, and I think if I'm not mistaken, like it's easier to build a nice RPK than it is to build like a nice Mark 46 or SAW or M60 or whatever else, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the RPKs are just functionally, for airsoft purposes, a different front kit on an AK. So all the stuff we said earlier about being able to get AK mags and AK parts to just sort of, fill your boots to do whatever you want to your heart's content with, it is really right there for you.
Yeah.
So in some ways, they're almost an optimal option for an airsoft LMG. Like if you're trying to build a thing that is in the real world actually a light machine gun to use for that.
I remember like all the work you had to get through to get a proper like hop-up chamber for your Mark 46 and do this and all the trouble that you went through. And I can't help but feel that if you had been doing an RPK, like that would have been solved months ago.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like,
it would have been,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of irony in this, in the fact that like I put an F2 in it, so like it just in every way would have been easier. There's no part of the project that would not have been easier if I just bought an RPK and put the parts in it.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like RPK is like S tier. They're bigger and they can be longer and all this kind of stuff. But like,
but I mean, you can get them in, like, if we're gonna step away just from the like classic model, as it were, you can get them in every form factor you can get an AK in, so you can get a shorter one. Like they're.
I definitely put that right up there, right next to the AK. I think that,
like, if you are going, I want to build a support weapon kind of kit. Yeah, there you go. This is a fantastic platform for it. I know you heard it here, folks. Phil and I like AKs now.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. All right. Before we keep going, I'm just going to slip the FAMAS up here.
Ooh,
and
cheeky.
we can move on. No, so I think I want to talk about, because I've talked about the FAMAS a lot. I love the FAMAS, but I think, and this is the FAMAS F2, I believe, here, because it has the grip and then the foregrip and the pistol, whatever.
That's the slightly fancified version.
Yeah.
Modernized.
FAMAS was my first replica. It has such a distinctive look. Ian McCullum loves the FAMAS. Like all this stuff is really important. But for airsoft, I really didn't see any cool things about it.
I actually think it should stay up there because it's one of the first airsoft guns. Like, just
that's true.
The fact that the TM FAMAS is one of the first like good, cool, works well airsoft guns that ever existed kind of gives me a soft spot for it. Like,
yeah, but it can't be. It definitely can't compete with it. Like, for people who haven't used an original TM FAMAS, there's so many things that you need to understand. Like, the battery would go in the foregrip, but the foregrip was, or like the heat shield underneath the barrel or whatever. But it was all made of plastic, and that thing would creak so much. like you would hold on to it and it would just creak under your
It
grip. And
has
like,
all the same problems the G36 has because it's
yeah,
made out of the same material. Like,
yeah, it's not awesome. And then the mags were proprietary. I know in this version they have the Stanag mags, but the mags that I had with mine, I had three mags. I had a high cap and two low caps, and they only fit that
that
gun
was all you were ever
because
gonna
of the way they
have.
latched and like yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Um.
honestly like, I think put it down with the G36. Like, it's really, really cool. Um, and it gets like in the same way that the MP5K gets the love from me, just because I really like the damn thing.
Mhm.
It's awesome, but like as a practical, and that's we seem to be erring, as we often do, on the side of like, so really, how are we going to rate these? Well, would you want to game it? And the answer is no.
Mhm. I mean, I would absolutely game any of these in C tier for sure, but I think as you go up in the tiers, like you get to like a better overall experience. I think there's a longevity as well that's associated with the ones higher up here. I'm not feeling that Chris Vector
Yeah,
at a
I
B.
think we may need to sneak the Chris Vector back
Yeah,
down. Um,
yeah, I do think it's more of a C, given what
as
we've said.
yeah, as much as
Um,
I still think it's really neat. It's just sort of like,
yeah,
yeah, no,
it's okay,
I don't
but like it's not.
I don't know that it's holding its own up there.
Yeah. Um, let's see. What are we going to pick next? Evo, Scorpion Evo. Let's talk about that one.
All right, that's fair.
You have the most recent experience with that.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts?
So I mean, like, I just sold the thing. So I guess I have a slight bias. And the answer is like, it is a really cool little SMG. If you have the budget to put into like getting the longer barreled version and stuff, or have access to one, I was just running a standard one. It's very modifiable. It's very cool. I got to give it solid props. HBA version out of the box worked quite well. I had to clean it up when I got it, but that's because the previous owner was a numpty.
Mhm.
The electric ones, I've done a lot of looking into just out of curiosity, to be honest, to see how they compared, and they stack up really well. You can buy one and run it, and it's quite a good little platform. It's also absolutely not for me.
Because it's quite a little platform.
Yeah. I mean, even the carbine length versions would probably have been a better choice for me in my big gangly arms. But like, yeah, it definitely is something different. One of the things that is a pro for a lot of people, or at least an appealing piece for a lot of people, is the fact that it stops shooting when it runs out of BBs per mag. I actually found that irritating because I kept thinking it was breaking.
Mhm.
But like, that's not really a fault. It's just a
Yeah,
me
yeah,
thing.
it's a training thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like, that's a practice thing. At the end of the day, I put it in, honestly, like, D tier. I would rather have
D.
I mean, if we're looking at the stuff we've got there, like, every single SMG we've looked at other than it, I would rather use except the Uzi.
That's
um
funny. I was actually going to say it's a B tier. I think that um, for me, like the ergonomics were fine. Like it was totally manageable. Um, But as I say this, would I rather use it compared to a FAMAS? I mean, maybe not. I don't know.
and
Maybe
like,
it's on. Maybe I'll meet you in the middle on C tier.
yeah,
Just because I think you didn't use the carbine length version. I know Chaz has one and he swears by it as well.
and
Again,
like, it
he's not huge, right?
oh
So
yeah, and like,
that yeah.
it pew pews good. Like, they're a nice, accurate little compact um airsoft gun. Like, um I mean, I'm realizing as we do this, that if I was going to HPA a SMG, I'd probably do an MP5.
Yeah.
And somewhere Chaz is like, yes, you would.
Yeah. All right, Pat, you pick one more, I'll pick one more, and then we'll wrap it up. How
All
about
right.
that?
Well, I kind of want to do the XM8, um,
Okay.
just because it's another one that I thought about buying like early in my airsoft career. So like, the earlier we are in my airsoft career, I think the more I'm into like sci-fi high techy looking guns.
Yeah.
And I've definitely uh, I've also handled these. There were a couple that went through the community here and then went away pretty quickly. And I think it really just boils down to it has the exact same problems the G36 does.
Yeah.
Um,
I didn't get a chance to handle the ones that came through our community, but I definitely would agree. I think it's a G36 minus minus. I think like yes, it looks cooler, but it's not. It's worse in just about every way except looks.
well, and like it's a G36 that you have to do extra steps to get parts for and get mags for
Yeah.
and work on. And like I I still have like some affection for it because it looks cool in sci-fi, and like just sci-fi guns look cool to me, right?
Hmm.
It's very futury. But like, yeah, plasticky, not super fun,
Yeah.
not in love.
Yeah.
Probably yeah,
So I'm
D.
yeah,
I
that'd
might
be
actually, you know what?
Dave.
Honestly, I might actually put the ones we had here because they were cheap as well in the F tier.
Yeah.
Just on the like, this doesn't do any of the things I want it to, and at least like the G36 has some, you know, some positive features. Um, and like, I actually would rather use an L85. Ugh, God, can't believe I've said
Mhm.
that.
Well, I mean, you're the one who handled it, so I'll defer to you. Uh, for our last one, I'm gonna pick the Scar. So Scar H, Scar L. Um, I think this is probably of all the replicas here, aside from the M4 style, this is the one that you and I have the most time with.
For
It's
sure.
also the one that I have a lot of real steel time with, compared because I had a chance to fire this last time I was in the States. Um, I loved our scars. I thought like they were the bee's knees, the cat's meow, whatever you wanna you wanna call it. Like they were excellent.
I wouldn't buy another Scar because of a bunch of mechanical, technical things with them,
Yeah,
um, which is kind of a bummer because I think they look awesome.
yeah.
Um,
Minus the boot
you
stock,
know,
which I mean,
well,
whatever.
yeah, fair. That's not amazing, but like, you know, it works really well. I definitely am a like HK convert 416, 417 guy at this point in my
Hmm.
airsoft career. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's hard not to think the Scar is cool. It looks really good. It's very unique. It's very distinctive. It looks nice and threatening, if that's a thing you know you like the vibe of. It's got all the rail real estate for anything we'd ever put on it.
Yeah,
Um,
it has ambi controls, which is nice too.
yep,
The way that they achieved the fire selector on ours was a real pain, like with that little ball bearing and stuff. Like,
yep. That's the
understand how they did it, but that was
yeah. That's
not great.
the drawback for me is oops, sorry. Um, the drawback for me is so all of them have fiddly fire selectors. Um, you know, even the nicest ones. I've played with VFC ones. They're really quite spiffy. The takedown's a nuisance. They have a proprietary hop up. Like the at the end of the day, I think they're awesome, but also all of the reasons we moved away from them are things that for me put them on B tier. Like it's a really cool platform. It's an M4 platform. It's an effective
Yeah,
platform. But in terms of like ease of maintenance or upgradability, it is just torture. And like I've reached like I could probably still take apart a GNG one in like 15 minutes.
yeah.
Just from the number of times I've taken them
We
down.
did it so many times, man.
But um that never got fun. Right?
Yeah.
You know, you can do a whole lot with them in terms of like stuffing bits and pieces inside and making them work well too. So I really, you know, I have a soft spot for them. You know, I would probably only buy one if I were buying like a GBB. Um, and like I've already sort of accepted at that point that it's not practical, and I'm just getting something different for the sake of form factor.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it's again like it's basically an M4, so you can do most of the things you can do with an M4 with it. And like if there's one that I don't know about that has like a good hop up unit that you can buy third party, then it gets a lot more viable from my point of view.
And when I think back to sort of the my history with them, like I would go back to uh, uh a Scar before I went back to a FAMAS, right? Absolutely. I would prefer to go to like maybe an MP5 or an M16 or something like that. But certainly they're, like I have a lot of good memories. I think we did a lot of really we played very effectively with them. Like we upgraded them, like they were
Oh
they
yeah,
were
we
doing everything we wanted them to, just not the most effective, easiest way possible because of all the workarounds that we had
yeah, you can
to
definitely
take. Yeah.
do anything with them. It was just a pain. Still really like the iron sights on them. Like that's a thing
Yeah.
I miss.
Yeah.
Insofar as I miss using iron sights, like hasn't come up lately, but
Mhm.
no, I think they're fantastic. I rate them below M16s and M4s. Partly, I will say, MB stuff notwithstanding, I like the fire selector on the M4 better.
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely agree with
I find
that.
it more comfortable to manipulate and easier to control. Part of that maybe is an airsoft replica thing, because the way they're built as a switch on an airsoft gun is like, ugh. um,
Yeah, it's mushy, I
you
find,
know, yeah,
comparatively.
it's
Yeah.
not crisp, and like, um, I feel like possibly part of the problem is just getting a Scar to work as an airsoft gun required a lot of complicated stuff.
Yeah. So guys, that's our first time ever doing any sort of tier list ranking. Hopefully you found this entertaining. Let us know in the comments if this is something like you'd like to see us do in the future on maybe other replicas or different other pieces of kit, perhaps.
Totally. I'm like,
And if you disagree with us too, please let us know because we're spoiling for a fight. So there it is.
we're all about it. And like, come talk to us on the Discord. Come tell me that I'm wrong about your XM8, you know.
Yeah,
But also, if you guys liked this as an idea, I think we only got through half of them. So like, we could definitely do more of this.
most certainly.
We could also, if people were interested, like rating, specifically like get, 10 or 15 setups from the Discord, which will take, 5 minutes. Hey guys, I want pictures. There you go.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
do a similar thing with like, uh, guns from Discord and fill, or replicas, I should say, from the Discord. And it would be fairly easy for us to do that in a way where I don't know who owns what. So you guys will get some bonus amusement out of that while Phil does.
Yeah.
So I know the Discord loves a chance to see me sticking my foot in it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, and like I said, we both said, give us the feedback. We'd love to hear it. Until then, though, that's all we got for you. Thank you so much for listening or watching if you watch it on YouTube, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.